up until 4Ds, we probably had 300 million views across all socials organically. And that's over the course of 8 years, right? We just did half of that in 6 months after 4Ds.
I just
I
got
think that's a good,
goosebumps.
yeah, I think that's like a good comparison. We're really, really, really like exploding on the attention side of the business since we went to 4Ds. Really, every business is the same. We're all just trying to get attention.
You are now tuned in to the Explosive Growth series, where we sit down with small business owners who are hacking the attention economy. I'm your host, Rima, head of education here at the Sasha Group. And trust me when I say this is going to be a good one, because by the end of this episode, you'll be exploding with breakthroughs. We initially met about a year ago, and I would just love to hear from you if you could go down memory lane. Where were you in September of 2023, and what was it that led you to the 4Ds?
Yeah. So just for context, Get Up and Go is a franchise. Being the franchisor CEO, a lot of my role is like finding new franchisees and training, current and new franchisees, onboarding people, really just growing the entire operations. At that point, I think we were at maybe like 26, 25 locations or something like that, and really just focused on expansion. So that's kind of what brought me to 4Ds, was that I know there's a lot of different things that I can be doing and should be doing to expand the business. And I haven't really heard Gary specifically talk much on franchising. So it was kind of interesting for me to, be in the room with him, ask questions about franchising and learn more from you guys, from all, not just Gary, but from all the other speakers too. That's kind of what brought me in. They had an open seat for an upcoming 4Ds. And I was like, oh, I think like this is the time that I have to do it. Right. So yeah, it was an interesting journey getting there. Me and my friend Ike went together and we got on a plane down here in Palm Beach, and we're sitting in the plane, and they canceled our flight as we were sitting in the plane, like ready to take off. So we had one day until 4D started. So we ended up driving all the way from Florida to New York in that one day that we had between. And it was really fun because I got to spend a lot of time with a good friend of mine. And it just created like this cool little memory that went alongside of the entire 4Ds experience. So it was fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you that. So one of the things that I wanted to ask was, looking back, obviously it's an investment, and for you especially, it's an investment of time. Like, you literally had to drive
Yeah.
from Florida to New York. If you could think about your year in a glance, measure it up with the expectations you had going in and how
Mhm.
you can kind of like value it right now.
I like to look at these things as like it's a day or two of investing time, money, and effort, but it's going to pay off for like several years. I think it's one of those things that will forever be repaid. Like for me, it's definitely paid off way more than what I put into it, and it will continue over time. Like the things that we learn there from a organic content perspective, from platforms and culture perspective, like all things that I'm very much using today and tomorrow and the next day and beyond, right? The investment, I think, is one of those things you really need to look at like over time. If you actually utilize the things that you learn in that, you're going to make that investment back in whatever business that you're in, or whatever you're looking to try and do. I'm very happy that I did do it, and it's also brought me closer to like the Vayner ecosystem and the people that are in it, and the relationships from that as well have just been super super useful. And I actually still talk to a few people in the 4Ds class that I was into. So even that part of it is kind of like an unexpected little bonus too, which has been fun.
So when you think about people in that room, right? One of the things that I know when I'm investing in group programs, I'm kind of like, okay, but like it's an hour of Q&A. What am I going to learn from like all the other people asking random
Yeah.
questions, right? Like that's a misconception I think that a lot of us go in with. And my assumption is in a lot of these programs that you are investing in, you're probably the one of the only, if not the only person running, a kayaking franchise.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to learn from people who are not just in different industries, but even have like a completely different business model?
The cool thing, and I think anyone that's probably listened to Gary's podcast or a YouTube video or anything of his, is like he does such a good job of connecting the dots and making anyone's question feel relevant. Not just Gary, but literally everyone else that entire day did that. And so, like, one example two of the guys next to me in that room owned a drone business, and like they were talking about, how do we put out content like that's fun and engaging and gets people to know about us, and so one of the things that Gary brought up was just like a really unique way that they could create a podcast and create a lot of content around that. And then it makes you think like, well, how could I do a podcast like in my kayak thing? And then eventually he was like, you know what, Justin, you should make a podcast in a kayak. So I was like, okay, I will. So it's one of those things that like literally we had, I don't know, probably seven different, completely different businesses represented in that room. And everyone's questions somehow correlated back to something that I could be doing in my business that would make a bit of a difference. Whether that was like a venue, whether that was like we had an AI expert in the room, we had another marketing agency in the room, and all of those questions that were being answered were things that like I took notes on, and I was like, ooh, I wonder if I could use that same concept, but in my world in some sort of way. And so I think that part of it is huge. Like everyone that entire day, but especially Gary is just so good at making it relevant for everyone in the room. And yeah, walking into it, I'm like, what is he going to know about clear kayak tours and like, a kayak franchise? But then I'm like, really, every business is the same. We're all just like trying to get attention. We're all just trying to build something and grow something and create cool culture within that and find customers. And at the end of the day, like what everyone's questions typically seem to be around, and really helped me get a better idea of how to do that within my own business. And then, yeah, the second part of that is the people that were in that room. My good friend now, I'll call him that, Ronsley, was an AI expert in that room, and I didn't know him before that day. And we got talking. He was like, "Oh, your business is cool," and I was like, "Well, shoot, you know a lot about AI. Like, we need to talk more." We ended up chatting a few times after that, and then we ended up both becoming a part of the Vive program in the Vayner world. And so now I get to see him a whole lot more. I think just even like those couple conversations I had with him after the 4Ds about like, how do I really, really go deep on AI within my world, and just being able to, bounce questions off of these other people that are in the room. I think that's a fun part of it. You get to be a part of the 4Ds alumni Facebook group afterwards, right? And so, being in that and being able to pose a question in there or maybe answer someone else's question that's in there has also been helpful, and just kind of seeing what other people are talking about. I think at the end of the day, like one of the big things for me is just growing my network, and being in a room like that is only going to help grow that network.
Speaking of LinkedIn, I did my little stalk, and I've just been seeing the success that you have been sharing with other business owners on LinkedIn. And I just want to hear from you directly, like walk us through some of the things that you've implemented from a social media perspective in a year's time. What would you say are the specific like tactics or resources that have led to that growth?
I mean, immediately after 4Ds, I was like, okay, if there's any time to double down on content, our content strategy, on our posting volume and all of that, I was like, now is the time. After that, I was like, I knew it was the time, but that kind of like solidified the thought that like, okay, it's the time. Literally in October, so a month after 4Ds, I hired a full-time community manager who was specifically brought on to help build a community within our ecosystem, but also help increase the amount of volume that we put out on socials across the board. The cool thing is, as a franchise, like each of our locations have their own social media, and then we have kind of like a corporate social media account. So I brought her on to kind of run that corporate account. My thought was like we learned so much about strategic organic content and the platform and culture. And I'm like, okay, I need someone that can like use these methodologies and do this like on a daily basis. Like I love doing it myself, but I also know that I don't necessarily have the time to do all of that myself and continue to grow a franchise. So brought on the community manager and literally put her to work and was like, hey, we need to be making content specifically for different platforms. We need to be trying different content. We need to just be doing a lot of different things. And in the past, we posted like a lot of 5 to 10 second videos of just something that happened on a tour, right? And those worked. They worked fine. But really, I was like, we need to be making specific content, like actually voiceovers, green screens, like compilations of like all the wildlife that we see at locations, and carousel posts and like meme posts with the carousel on it, and like all of these different things. And so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put this community manager to work. We're gonna do at least three posts a day on every platform. You know, for us, that's Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and TikTok. And so we're gonna do three times a day, every day on all of these platforms. You're gonna create content. You're gonna compile all the content from our franchisees. You're gonna do the green screens. You're gonna do the voiceovers. You're gonna all of those things, right? And so since we hired her, so we're coming up on a year now, and in a couple months here, and I think like so far this year, we probably have 100, and I haven't ran it since like June, but we probably have like 150 million organic views across all platforms. That type of attention is invaluable, you know, and as Gary would say, like that's free attention that like is the most underpriced thing that you can possibly get. Literally, I just have doubled down, or I would say I probably like tripled down or quadrupled down the amount of, you know, posts that we do, and really just thinking about it differently. Before it was really just let's capture 5 to 10 second videos and post them. And now it's like, let's think about the platform we're posting it on, and let's think about the content that we're posting on the platform. And that shift in the mindset has really been helpful in achieving, you know, that amount of reach that we have this year.
I love, love, love that. I have like 10 follow-up questions to that, but I'm going to start really simple with just like give us a quick before after. So you said you probably were at like 150 million, you said impressions this year.
Mhm.
And I would just love to hear if you have even just rough numbers of like the state of affairs, you know, pre 4Ds, and you know, you
Yeah.
just kind of spoke to the after.
Well, our business has been open for 8 years, and up until 4Ds, we probably had 300 million views across all socials organically, maybe a little bit more, somewhere right around there. And that's over the course of 8 years, right? And so we just did half of that in 6 months after 4Ds. So
I just
I
got
think that's a good,
goosebumps.
yeah, I think that's like a good comparison, you know, we're really, really, really like exploding on the attention side of the business since we went to 4Ds.
That's amazing. Congrats. I'm so happy for you. And I like feel proud of you, even though I don't even really know you like that. Feel great that we were even like a
Part
small
of it.
part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talk a lot about posting 3 times a day on most of your accounts and the importance of being consistent in that way. So I want you to think about the business owner who thinks three a day is unrealistic and or excessive and annoying. So we've heard all of those, like different variations of that. And especially on that like latter point of excessive and annoying for businesses that aren't naturally as like fun and cool as yours, where there's not like this very clear, like, you know, show versus tell element, professional services or like certain B2B models. What would you say to that person who is hearing you say 3 times a day and just doesn't think that it applies to them?
I think there's so many different forms of content that they should be trying. I think that's the biggest thing is just trying new things. And we learned in 4Ds all about signals and like, you know, how do we use those signals to create content and how do we create content around that? And so I get this question a lot in the tourism world, even specifically for people that run like a walking tour, right? They're like, you know, it's really not as pretty as a clear kayaking tour where a manatee comes up and hugs the bottom of your kayak. Yes, I get that. It's probably true, right? I probably have more of a low hanging fruit when it comes to the visual side of it. But I think the piece that most people are missing when it comes to content is going that one extra step and creating that voiceover, creating that green screen video, creating that funny meme carousel. Even sometimes you see it on Gary's socials, like just using a quote that like he puts his little signature under, you know, as a post, and it creates some sort of commentary underneath it or discussion that's happening underneath it. And really, like, I think a lot of people get stuck on the number like three a day. It doesn't need to be three, it could be one, it could be seven. Like, it doesn't matter what the number is, it's just being consistent and showing up. They look at it as like this huge obstacle of like, well, shoot, I don't know what to post that much of every single day. You know, one of the cool things that the AI side of the conversation went down in the 4Ds, and then even afterwards with the buddy that I met there, is like coming up with content just using AI's help, like, you know, using it as a thinking partner tell AI what type of business you are, and then tell it to give you 30 fun reel ideas that you can use for Instagram Reels or Facebook Reels or YouTube Shorts or whatever. And it'll do a great job of like giving you some ideas of what will work, right? And so I think that's like the key thing here is like it doesn't need to be, if you're a plumber, it doesn't need to be a video of you actually plumbing. Like it can be a video of you talking about why you started your business. And that could lead to 50 videos about why you started your business. Like I know I follow people personally on TikTok that like just talk about the behind the scenes of their business and they never really talk about the customer facing side of things, right? And that to me is more interesting than the customer facing side of things. And a lot of people connect with the creator nowadays or the person that's behind the business more so than the business itself. And I think like using that idea is something that more people just need to lean into more. So for me, like that's, if we're ever posted in like a press article, I think we had like a Forbes article about sustainability that mentioned us. So for me, that's like, okay, let me screenshot this article and create a green screen video of me talking about the article that's behind my face on the video. As any new things happen in our industry or in my business, it's like, okay, let's come up with a voiceover for this, or let's come up with another green screen video, or let's come up with just a text post that we can do. Like, there's so many different ways to post nowadays. And I think people are just stuck on like, it needs to be this beautiful post produced, like, they need to have like $10,000 cameras and you can't just do it on your iPhone. But literally, that's all it takes. And it just takes a little bit of time and effort. And it's one of those things of like when you get in the routine of doing it, you're like, wow, why didn't I do that so much earlier? And it makes it simple once you really get in that routine. So I don't know. I think people just need to look at different ways and things that they can do to create content other than actually taking content of the thing that their business is doing.
You mentioned that you hired a community manager a month after the 4Ds. Was that something you were already planning to do? Or did that kind of like, did that idea come after?
It was something that I've like thought of, like, hey, I think we could really utilize someone like this, but 4Ds really like refined that idea in what I should make that person do. That was kind of the piece that was keeping me from it. Like I had this idea in my head of, okay, I know we need like a community manager that can help with some of like the customer facing stuff and building a community. But then I'm like, well, what does that mean? And like, what should that person do every day? And so those were the types of questions that, I asked and brought up in the 4Ds and gave me a much better idea of like, okay, if I do hire this person, these are some of the things that they should definitely be doing. And then maybe there's some other things I had in my head, but, it really like, I think for me, it was just more validation of like, yes, that's a great idea. And here's what that person should do if you bring them on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we love to talk about community engagement versus community management because I think there's this misconception that like it's just answering DMs or just answering like customer service requests, but there's so much more proactively
Yeah.
that that person can and should be doing. So I'm really glad that was helpful. Obviously, you're really busy, like you have a lot going on. And not just with your business, you also have a personal brand. But it begs the question, why are you going to the 4Ds? Why are you the one that's investing in these things and learning? Like, why not just delegate? Why do you feel like it's important for you to kind of like be the filter for a lot of that information first?
Yeah, I feel, as the CEO and also as the person that is like building a personal brand, I should know how to do all of the things that I'm telling someone else how to do, and like that's why I think Gary is so successful in his own business is like he has his Gary Vee brand so that he knows how to tell the rest of everyone how how social media should work and how market just attention in general should work. And so for me, it's like I really want to know how to do it. I'm at the point in my life where investing in myself has only paid off in great ways. And so, I think it all starts with the CEO or kind of with the top. And I wanted to be able to ask the questions that I thought would help me make the decisions for the path of our business and the path of my own personal brand. And yeah, I could send someone else there and maybe we'd get to the same result eventually. But I think there's just a lot that comes up during the day that you're like, oh, let me ask a question about this, or oh, like that one little piece that someone said really sticks with you in a way that maybe delegating that to someone else would have missed. Or and I think just like perspective wise of me having the vision of where the brand is going over the next several years is really important for me to also be the one to show up and learn the things so that I can tie that into where I see this all going.
So did you go into the 4Ds, it sounds like, also knowing you wanted to kind of bring in like your personal brand and workshop it as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was definitely a piece of it. I feel like, in my previous world of being a rapper and then going into entrepreneurship, like I always kind of wished I shared more of the journey along the way. And now I'm at the point of like, okay, I have a decent size franchise. Well, it's still a small franchise in the grand scheme of things, but like I want to share more of the journey with people. And I also think it's just really good for business to have someone that's like willing to talk about the business, in a public forum. And I share a lot of tips and tricks in the tourism world, and that has opened a lot of doors for me just within my own industry. And I think there's a place for anyone to build a personal brand. Like I've dabbled in it in the past, but like this was like, okay, it is now the time where I really need to go hard on it. And I think 4Ds was just like a big validation on that, and also hiring the community manager and going harder on social media. And like, it really just validated a lot of those thoughts and helped me like kind of hash out some of those details.
I know you read the book, Day Trading Attention,
Mhm.
and I would just love to hear from you. What are the gems that you've been applying that you think have made the most difference for you?
It was cool because I think like Gary was finishing writing the book or had just finished maybe right around the time that 4Ds was happening. So a lot of the things that were talked about in 4Ds were things that are in the book. So they go hand in hand, right? And I think the book does a really good job of giving actionable items like right now, like, hey, look at this post and why it worked, and like go try it for your own business and see what happens. You could scan the QR code and go right to the post and get the example, right? And so the combination of the two, going to 4Ds, hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, and then reading the book and getting like the very actionable pieces for anyone's business to read that book. There's been just so many like funny trends that have happened over the years. And in the past, we just wouldn't be quick on some of those things, or we wouldn't even try things, even though I'm like, oh, that would probably be cool if we did that in a kayak, or I don't know if we like recreated that some way. And like in the past, I was like, oh, maybe that's a little out there for our brand. But then it's like, no, these are the things that people enjoy watching and sharing and commenting on. And so those like repeatable, actionable posts that other people are doing, I think were really the things that helped. But ultimately, like that all ties back to the things that were talked about in 4Ds with the strategic organic content, with the platforms and culture. Like that's the one big thing that I think we didn't do a good job of before 4Ds was we didn't really care what platform was what. It was like, okay, we made the video, now let's just throw it everywhere with the same caption and like hope that it works everywhere. And then after 4Ds, it was like, no, no, no. Let's actually think about where we're posting this. Let's actually think about the caption on LinkedIn compared to the caption on TikTok, compared to YouTube. Like let's spend a little bit of time and effort like thinking about that before we post it. And I think that little like mindset shift has really, really helped. And I mean, that's just it's shown with the amount of results that we've had since then. And I really do recommend the book for every business owner because there's so many actionable things.
I saw your testimonial when you were, and you also posted it on your page, like when you were in the hotel room that night. I would just love to hear from you, like straight up. You drove, your freaking flight got canceled. You drove. Like this seemed like the most crazy kind of like low-key impulsive a couple days for you. What was that night in the hotel room like after the 4Ds? Or like you said, you kind of had all this like creative energy of like, okay, I actually need to start doing this shit now. Like what
Yeah.
was that next couple of days like for you?
The whole day of learning is like you're just taking everything in and you're like, oh, I need to try that, or I need to do that, or oh, that's a good idea, or wow, I haven't thought about that, or like your brain is just going. And yeah, at the end of the day, you're kind of like, whoa, that was a lot, but you're also like, wow, I have a lot to do. And then you're also like, okay, I know what I have to get done, to take the next step. So it's just like a mixture of all of those emotions in one, and then that and pairing that with just being tired a 19-hour drive from Florida and getting a few hours of sleep the night before. It was just, yeah, it was a really cool feeling because one, it was like validation of, okay, am I going to get my quote unquote money's worth out of it, and afterwards I was like, wow, that was incredible. And like just the adventure of getting there and doing it and having the time to talk with Gary and meeting everyone and learning from everyone. It really was just, I would say, a powerful like experience, and it's super motivating. I think that's the one other part of all of this is that like being in a room with other people that are all in the same situation, they're investing in themselves to, better themselves or better their business or, focus on growth or whatever that is. It's like, it's motivating being around them. It's motivating being around all of the people at Vayner. I love being the dumbest person in the room off, when it happens, because I'm like, wow, this is the type of room that I get to really learn from the other people. And I'm in a room full of people that know so much more than me that like I just am taking it all in. So at the end of the day, you get to take a deep breath and be like, wow, that was a lot, but like needed, like it needed to be a lot because that's what I wanted out of it is like, I wanted to be in a room of people that knew more than what I know. And I was. And so it was really cool to be able to experience that firsthand, feel like I got my worth out of it literally that night. Never mind, here we are almost a year later and knowing that I got my worth out of it after all that's happened. But yeah, overall, like the entire experience of getting up there and getting back and driving and meeting everyone and being in that room was just super motivating. And I think like doing those things just puts you in a headspace that really like makes you want to do more than what you even thought was possible. And so that was, I think, a really, really rewarding part of the entire experience is just getting that extra motivation, that kind of like drives you after doing that experience.
Yeah, I saw you comment. Someone commented on that post, like, oh, did you get things that you're going to implement? And you're like, watch how much we start posting. And I just love that because you commented that like last year and it's like proven to
Yeah.
be so true.
So that's funny. I should go back and like reply to myself on that.
This was amazing. Really enjoyed just hearing about you selfishly for my own purposes as well.
It's fun to reflect on the times, and yeah, like I didn't even realize it's already been a year almost, which is crazy. It's fun to reflect on what's happened over the last year.